Alright, Saturday, November 7th, 2020. I'm approaching Dover, Delaware, and going to have a brief return visit to the Air Mobility Command Museum.
On the right to Little Creek, then take the first right.
The Air Mobility Command Museum, as I was starting to say.
Turn right at the stop sign.
The museum closes at 3 o'clock, and it's going to be 2:15 by the time I get there. I figured. And they said they're only allowing the outside exhibits to be shown during this COVID-19 situation.
In 1/2 mile, turn left on Heritage Road.
So I figured I'd just have enough time for a quick walkthrough just to see what's changed since I was here last. I think they've got one or two, maybe three.
Mile, turn left on Heritage Road.
So 2 or 3 airplanes that are here that I probably didn't see the last time I was here.
Turn left on Heritage Road.
Wish they had some C-5 activity going on here. This is a big base for C-5s. Last time I was here, there weren't any flying during my visit.
Arrive at Air Mobility Command Museum.
Yeah, not a lot of cars here.
Arriving at Air Mobility Command Museum.
Alright, let's see what we can see while we're here. I expect that any of the airplanes that we could normally walk through are going to be closed. But we have the VC-9C here, which is sort of a executive transport plane related to the C-9, which is basically a DC-9. And there's a couple of C-141s, Starlifters. Yeah, it looks like they've got the walkthroughs closed. This one's a 141B, and this is a that's a C-141A. This is a C-141B. I think they've got 1 or 2 docents out here. Try not to be shooting into the sun more than I have to. Yeah, got the C-130E. They've got the 3 flying boxcar type of airplanes here. There, there, and there. And at least one of those was in pieces when I was here last. And a C9A/C medical airlift variant of the DC-9.
Hey, you guys like airplanes, huh? You like the big ones or the fast ones? We have some fast ones over here.
This is
Yeah, it is.
the one that was laying in pieces here when I was here last. It's still fenced in because restoration is not complete on it. They said they got it pretty much put back together, but it still needs to be repainted and a bit more work done on it, so it's not user friendly quite yet. And I thought the C-124 was not here the last time, but the curator just told me that it was here. I just don't remember seeing it here. Yeah, we got that A-26C there. This one is an important aircraft because it was part of the fleet of planes that dropped bridge sections at the Chosin, was it the Chosin Reservoir? I forget my history. Which allowed operations to take place, saved a bunch of lives. And all the other planes that participated are trashed. This is the only one of that famous mission that survives. It's basically the same type as this one, which is more restored. Of course, we have a C-123K provider here. It's another Fairchild flying boxcar type of aircraft. But not by nickname necessarily. To me, they're all flying boxcars because I can't remember the designations or the official or unofficial nicknames. This is C-119, just as this guy is. And this is one that is called the flying boxcar. And you've got a C-121C, which is based on the Lockheed Constellation commercial airliner. And then the C-124, quite a big airplane actually, but being based on a civilian passenger plane, it wasn't really well set up as a cargo airplane. The wing and the floor are way too far off the ground, caused all sorts of problems with its ability to do its job, as well as might be desired. Still, it served a long time and did a pretty good job, fairly reliable. C-124A Globemaster. But yeah, it was a double-decker with the upper level being for passengers and the lower level, which is all above the wing, being for cargo, although it could also be used as a second passenger deck. And they had a fold-up floor, so if they had low-level cargo on the bottom and passengers on the top, then they could have the intermediate floor folded down and used. If they were carrying big, tall cargo on the bottom, then they would just fold those floors up and have nothing on the top. But the ramp had to come down so steeply due to the high cargo floor that it was very difficult to get large cargo up the ramp and into there. And if it was long cargo, then it was pretty much out of the question. It just couldn't make the bend, which is why they came up with the C-133. It pretty much followed this guy here, and this was designed from the get-go as a cargo plane. High wing, very low floor, easy in and out, big clamshell doors on the rear. They use this to transport all sorts of things, including missiles and, you know, ICBMs, and lots of long tubular cargo, as well as, of course, you know, the tanks and pallets and trucks and all sorts of things. It's always been one of my favorites. Kind of a terrible airplane in many ways. Rushed into service, no prototype built. A lot of problems they had to fix after it was in service. And the airframe had all sorts of fatigue problems. There's all these reinforcing bands, which are kind of visible here, which were added after the fact. And the propeller tips were supersonic, and they'd essentially fling shock waves at the fuselage right in line with the props, and it was like having a bunch of zombies hammering on the fuselage constantly during anytime the engines were operating. Not a very nice plane to be in the cargo area during flight. Well, they moved the museum store out into a hot dog cart. Of course, one of my favorites, the only C-5 on display anywhere. And people can walk right up and stick their heads inside the landing gear bays and see all the complexity of the landing gear. Hi.
Any questions?
Okay, so this guy here came from Florida. And I think he said it's there's only one or two of these left. It's a pretty rare model. They got it back together again, but there are structural issues. That's why it's all still supported on wooden supports. There's still a lot of pieces not put on it. So this is one of those that has the fuel pods on the wingtips and then a jet engine.
Yes, this one carries into the smoke.
And there's no nose glass on this one. Some panels that have been pulled off for replacement. So anyway, this is a KB-50J Superfortress. Originally a B-50 Superfortress bomber aircraft, the B-50 started life as an upgraded model to the B-29 Superfortress. The general appearance of the B-29 and B-50 are similar, however the B-50 features several upgrades from the B-29 design, including more powerful engines and more reliable, I think, a taller tail, a redesigned cockpit, and many other structural changes. And often left out of that is an important point that the B-29 had a castering nose wheel. It wasn't controlled, you just had to steer it on the ground by brakes or differential power on the propellers to get the nose to caster around like a wheel on a shopping cart. But on the B-50, it was a steerable nose wheel, just like modern airplanes. That's an important point for ground handling. In 1956, the plane before you was the first B-50 to be converted to a KB-50. Instead of carrying bombs, the KB-50 carried two large fuel tanks in the bomb bay. It had two drogue hose pods mounted to the wingtips. That's what those are, not fuel tanks, they're drogue hose pods. Along with a third in the former tail gunner's position. In 1957, jet engines were added to boost the aircraft to safer speeds while refueling faster jet aircraft. Those that received jet engines were dubbed KB-50Js, which is what this is. The KB-50 was used successfully for about a year as it served as the basis for the KC-97 design, and both aircraft served concurrently until replaced by the jet-powered KC-135 Stratotanker. The last KB-50s flew as emergency refuelers for jet fighters over Vietnam before final retirement in 1965. So, that's the story of this guy. Ten minutes from official closing today. You can see a number of panels have been sanded or buffed up, and it still has a lot of corrosion areas that are being addressed. All right. Yeah, I figured since I was in the area, I would stop by and see this museum again. Like I said, I knew they had some aircraft editions, and it's just a shame to bypass a good museum if you have time, and do my little video update on YouTube. But if you want to watch my detailed video on this museum, that's elsewhere on my channel on YouTube. So this is another B-50 variant. This one being another refueling type. This one has the flying boom. And the double-decker fuselage. The KC-97L. In simplest terms, the C-97 was a cargo version of the World War II B-29 bomber, but with distinctive expanded fuselage. The last model, the KC-97L, which is this one, had 2 jet engines added to increase speed so they could be used to refuel the newer jet bombers and fighters. C-124 again. C-133 again. And the KC-135E. Another tanker. So it also has the flying boom in back. I was wondering if they'd put portalets out here since the restrooms inside the museum are not accessible at this time. There's a couple of good videos on YouTube about the last flight of a C-133. The one they had up in Anchorage, I think it was, in Alaska, was flown down to the Travis Air Force Base Air Museum, where it's on display now, and they took pretty good video coverage of that flight, both inside the plane and outside. K-54M Skymaster, based on the DC-4 commercial air transport. Is using one of those 360-degree cameras making a virtual museum visit, I think. So that was a DC-4 variant. Here's a C-131D, which is, I think, based on a Convair. It's called the Samaritan. It was based on the Convair 240, 340, and 440 airliners. Alright, well, that takes me to official closing time. They said they weren't going to actually kick us out right on the stroke of 3, but I still have some mileage to cover today. Might as well get on the road. If you're in this area, make sure you stop by the Air Mobility Command Museum. One of a kind.